into the California Creative Corps. What is it? It's an economic and workforce recovery pilot program intended to fuel positivity, regain public trust, and inspire health and safety across California's diverse populations. And this is where we remind ourselves that we've just come through a major pandemic. This is like a once in a generation, hopefully just once, generation phenomena to have hit us unexpectedly. And we're reeling from it at a time of great uncertainty in the world. And we believe that by putting artists to work and drawing the work of artists closer to public life, placing the forefront of issues that are critical to society and of meaning to us locally, that we can help wrestle with some of these issues. So what are the issues? Nevada County Arts Council is among 13 organizations, 9 regions across California, responsible for administering almost $60 million of funding. In upstate California, we have, which is the yellow region you see on the map here, we have 19 counties and almost $3.4 million to disperse. And those are the funds that we're speaking to today. So California Arts Council would like us to focus on placing the artist in a position where we create awareness around water, energy, climate disaster, public awareness related to water and energy conservation, climate mitigation, emergency preparedness, relief and recovery. Think fire. Almost all of Sierra County is forested, yes? Like 100% of the land here is forested.
Actually, it's 70 to 90%.
It's 70 to 90%. That's quite a divergence, 70 to 90. Interesting.
Depends on if you're on the east side versus the west side.
I see. Interesting.
Plus 78% is owned by the federal government.
Yes, yes. So civic engagement. So in other words, think environment when you're thinking of that first program goal. And then number 2, civic engagement, including election participation. 3, social justice and community engagement. And 4, public health awareness. Again, of course, how could we not have a focus on public health awareness coming out of the pandemic? These are the regions within California, according to the California Creative Corps. Again, you can see that we up the top have an enormous job to make sure that we're serving our diverse populations. And we'll talk more about that in a little moment. Of course, there are many ways of looking at the upstate region. The map on the left speaks to the way another very important program is rolling out right now called the California Economic Resiliency Fund, the SURF Fund. There's a very important way that we want to remind ourselves to observe upstate California through our First Peoples. Would you speak to this delicious map at the bottom, Katrina? Can you speak to our hydraulic map?
Yeah. Well, most of all, it's in this upstate region. We have 3 primary hydrologic regions, and that's basically if a drop of water fell from the sky, where would it flow out? And it's quite interesting to see all the interconnections between our counties as a result of sharing watersheds. So Sierra County, obviously we are part of the Sacramento River watershed basin, although I should have looked at the map again, because over on the other side of the divide, that would actually flow into the northern Lahontan region, the other part of Sierra County on the other part of the crest. So just that awareness of, often communities that share watersheds have a lot of reasons to engage and work together. And you cross into 2 different watersheds here.
Exactly. So one of the wonderful opportunities about the Creative Corps is that it allows you to think beyond your county lines. So we know that parts of the Yuba River flow into other counties, and that lends itself, for example, just as an example, to doing cross-county collaborations. So we show these maps just as a reminder of the different ways of dreaming up projects that will serve your community. So if we look at the upstate region that this particular grant will serve, we're looking at 19 counties, 31% of the total geography of California, but only 4.2% of its population. As Katrina mentioned, we have 3 primary watersheds, huge ranges of precipitation, as we're experiencing right now, and elevations ranging from obviously sea level all the way up to Mount Shasta at over 14,000 feet. And the kind of economies, agriculture, timber, ocean fisheries, mining, tourism, and energy that you would expect from a rural part of the world. So we're going to be working, how on earth will we reach these 19 counties? So there's a BJ and Eliza in every single county in the 19 county region of upstate California. So BJ and I will be working with our fellow county arts agencies. We're known as the state local partners to the California Arts Council. And we are the network that allows California Arts Council to, in a way, keep its finger on the pulse in terms of how the arts are reaching the diverse populations of California. And that's one of our aims for this program. Today, we're going to be introducing a tool that you can use if you're thinking of applying for a grant. And it's the California Healthy Places Index. And it's a way for us to consider the relative health of communities. The idea being that funds are steered towards communities that are suffering inequities in health outcomes. And we'll be looking at some of the things that create those inequities today. Let's look at Sierra County. Do you want to speak to this one, Katrina?
Sure. Well, and when we come into each county, we familiarize ourselves with the overall, the cities in the area, because we're going to be looking at the census tracts within there, understanding where the county seat is, of course, our state local partner, looking at the land overall. As you can see there, Sierra County is over 4,000 square miles, which is 8.4% of the upstate geography, so quite a bit. Peak elevation, we share with Nevada County and Sierra County, we share very close peaks by near Lola Peak. Looking at the watersheds, as we talked about, and public lands. Public lands were particularly relevant in Plumas County because, as they informed us, a lot of the county revenue ends up not in their hand. So much of the land, I think it was 90% of the land is public there. So it deeply impacts the amount of tax revenue they see for different programs. And looking as well at colleges and universities to understand, the opportunities. Can a student that wants to continue on stay within their county for getting postgraduate work, or do they need to actually leave the area?
And what we do is when we come into a county, we know that this. Know that this presentation will be available. We're going to load it up onto a website that we've created specifically for this grant program called Upstate California Creative Corps, upstatecreativecorps.org. And I'll share the website link with you, and perhaps Gianna can also put it into the chat of the Zoom as well. And what we want to do is, in a way, present you with the obvious for those of you that live here, just to act as little clues when you're thinking about how to frame your application narrative. We also like to list the numerous resource groups as a way to, if you are an artist, perhaps align yourself with one or other resource group that might be in turn aligned with a program goal. Some artists like to work alone. They may have a standalone project that they've been working on for years and be very confident and apply for perhaps a slightly smaller grant that they feel utterly confident in rolling out by themselves. Other artists might like to align themselves with, a government department that has a focus on water or drainage or forest management or fire. And in that case, it's quite helpful to look at what's here in Sierra County in considering a proposal to this grant. This is the most extraordinary map. It shows the history.
Eliza, Could I just real quickly, I just want to let people know that those of you
Yes.
who attended on that slide. So now the Zoom people couldn't see that slide about the community groups, but just we are adding to this list. This is a living list. So I've already added the groups that are on Zoom. Gianna's sending around a list there and people are signing in. So we are adding to this list as we go. So please do give us feedback.
Great, okay. Yes, Gianna was busy taking great pictures of who's in the room. But she's on it now, thank you. She's multitasking. So this particular slide shows, basically it's a history. I think it's about 100 years of history of fire in upstate California. And the circled piece of the map hovers over Sierra County. If you were to look at this map with the different colors being more recent or further back in time, which colors do you think are the pale green ones versus the large pink ones, for example?
Pale green would be back in time and pink would be recent.
Spot on. And why do you think that is?
Because we've had a lot more fires and you can just see it on that map in recent history.
Yes, and the fires are getting bigger and they're harder to control. So you see those fires are sweeping across Northern California and consuming huge tracts of land. And we share this as a way for us to remind ourselves, something we barely need to be reminded of, how absolutely precipitous and dangerous and prone to fire Northern California is. So we're hoping through our Upstate California Creative Corps that we get a good few projects that are going to be focusing on climate mitigation, environment, fire, watersheds, etc., etc. You can see how important it is. Did you want to add anything to that, Katrina?
Mainly, Eliza's going to show you a few slides as she goes through of different representations of fire. And it's most of all just for us to highlight one of the things after she shows you some of these slides to do with the recent fires within the area. Then you'll see one about the North Yuba Forest Partnership. And it's become very clear, of course, that we've learned that a lot of the reasons we're seeing these large scale, big, hot burning fires is because our forests are actually quite dense. There's a lot of trees close together. It's not like it was historically where we had very large trees and a little more space where Native Americans had land practices that were conducive to thinner forests. So just plugging it to the extent of in thinking about our counties, especially in this region, where do we want to be in 50 years and how can we get there? And how does that relate to these forests that we live in?
It's great that you mentioned this. I mean, we're just looking at that slide, Katrina, which compares how our forests look from space now compared to how they looked in former years in terms of density. It's absolutely fascinating and terrifying in terms of how they lend themselves to fire now. And actually, BJ and us were just talking about the North Yuba Forest Partnership before we started. It's an extraordinary collection of, is it 9 partners, 9 agencies working together that completely lends itself to an artist aligning itself with that partnership and documenting the work of the partnership. Here we're looking at the Yuba watershed, Katrina, and in Sierra County, we're looking at the North Fork, aren't we? The North Yuba mostly. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, primarily. And obviously watersheds don't follow county boundaries. So we're all, of course, quite connected through sharing a watershed, through sharing different elements of that. And then think about downstream as well. There's quite a few counties. The Yuba comes down right into Yuba County. And when we were there presenting, we learned from quite a few people, they're very unfamiliar with their upper watersheds. You can think about partnering with your communities downstream as a connected watershed as well.
We also have the Feather River watershed.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
East Sierra County.
In eastern Sierra County, the Feather River. And of course, there's the confluence of the Feather and Yuba rivers in Marysville, isn't it? Is it Marysville or Yuba City? Yeah.
I'm not sure if the Feather River, it's in the Lahontan, and I don't think it goes I'm not sure.
Close to Orville.
Yeah, Feather River's up at Orville, but yes, that's right where you're.
That was the middle fork.
Yes, yeah. Now, one of the things we're going to be looking at, as I mentioned, is the Healthy Places Index. And within the Healthy Places Index, there's a correlation that is drawn between community health and racial justice and health equity. And I think by now we all understand, you know, we've seen enough data to understand that there is a relationship between one's demographics and one's health in terms of communities. And we ask you just to pay attention to that element if you're applying for funding. So if, for example, we can see here that Sierra County has 10% Hispanic or Latinx folks living here, that's actually quite a high, you know, that's quite a number of folks that you wouldn't want to ignore in an application. So you'll want to, you know, you want to ask yourselves, where are our Hispanic or Latino friends when we're considering this project, bearing in mind that 10% of the population is Hispanic or Latino. That's just an example. Also look at, it seems like such a small number, and we start with a land recognition. Who are our American Indian and Alaska Native Indigenous peoples? I know that when I worked with BJ to ensure that Sierra County residents were in receipt of CARES Act funding for arts organizations supporting our least represented peoples, we were able to, through research, we were able to really support people. So be thinking about that when you're thinking about applying for funding as well. Wonderful. So here it is. This is what the Healthy Places Index looks like. We call it the HPI. If I use the acronym HPI going forward, would you remember, or shall I just keep calling it Healthy Places Index? So when you look at this map, we're looking at the map of California at the moment. What do you think? You see two colors essentially, blue and green. You see dark blue, light blue, and you see dark green and light green. What do you think the most healthy color-coded parts of California are?
Green.
Green. And why do you think they are? Why do you think the green places are healthier?
Grass growing outside the city.
Economics.
Yeah,
Yeah, economics.
and not to mention food sources. I mean, we don't have any grocery stores or gas stations really.
Remember, when you're speaking, use your outdoor voices, because we're catching you on video and we're recording you on Zoom, so it's double trouble. And since this is a listening session, we actually really do want to hear you. But you're quite right, and the green areas really, you know, can be closely tied to areas with resources, whether it's schools, hospitals, you know, retail density, job opportunities, transportation so that people can commute to better jobs, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. So what does Northern California look like? Upstate California. Pretty blue, right? So the darker the blue, according to the Healthy Places Index, the least healthy the community. So we really want to focus on those blue areas. Blue areas we will prioritize when we think about funding. And we're going to teach you how to look at the map in terms of identifying areas within your community that we might look at together. But we also, Katrina and I will share with you that we want to draw upon local wisdom and your lived experience. We feel a few of the metrics, the way that the data has been collected, that perhaps are better suited to some of our urban areas like San Francisco, San Diego, Los Angeles, etc. And we are in conversation with the Public Health Alliance of California now to gently challenge those, because this is an evolving, amazing platform. that is being used in by multiple government entities now and agencies in funding applications and even in other states now. So it is a useful tool, and then we also invite you to use relativity with it as well. So the stripy areas are called exclusion zones, and that's where the Public Health Alliance of California hasn't felt completely comfortable drawing data, using data and drawing, drawing conclusions, correlating, information, because the population numbers are either too low, they're either under 1,500 per exclusion zone, or there are situations with, I'm trying to remember how so for example, in Lassen County, there's a very high percentage of prison population. And so, how to count that and then draw conclusions from it, it's very hard to do. So in Sierra County, you don't have that problem, just to say. There are no exclusion zones in Sierra County, but if you were thinking of doing a much larger regional project and proposing it, and you were going up into Lassen County or elsewhere where there's an exclusion zone, you'd want to sort of look into why that is.
Did you notice though that, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all.
Those blue places are all places that have water problems with their agriculture.
Interesting,
If
interesting.
you look at Siskiyou County, I mean, they cut the water off and had big water wars, all those. And down south, they lost their water from Colorado. So all those places are all having, and San Joaquin Valley, that's bright blue in there. They got their suntowns with no water at all.
And I love that you've reminded me to mention this. So this is drawing upon census data from 2020. So in 2020, the Colorado River hadn't yet dried up.
Right.
Greenville hadn't yet burnt down. So there's vital information that upstate Californians carry that this map doesn't yet take into account. So we'll take all that into account when we're writing our applications, right? So really important. Thank you for that.
It also seems to correlate with the fire map.
Yep.
The pink, the bright pink on the fire map is very similar to the
Interesting.
blue, dark blue.
Interesting. So again, you're going to draw upon
Which is water.
yeah, it's all connected. Clean air, water, forest management, watersheds,
Dead
it's all
trees.
connected. Yeah.
I'd
Brilliant.
like to say something real quickly. This is,
Yes.
I'd still rather to live here than in the green areas. I wanted to register.
Oh, we're totally with you, aren't we? Love it here, but it can be terrifying. And some of the things that we grapple with in rural California aren't explicitly referred to within the Healthy Places Index. So fire, mental health, these are two very different and critical themes that come up time and time again. Nevertheless, you will see that some of these markers will resonate with you. So the Healthy Places Index looks at the economic picture of a community. It looks at education. It looks at social impacts, such as markers, such as the degree to which a population is participating in the census and feels safe to vote. If not, why not? Is it because they're undocumented? Does that mean that they don't experience life with a sense of autonomy or being heard? Does it mean that they don't feel safe to vote? Does it mean that they don't have access to healthcare? There are so many things, so many conclusions that you can draw from this. So we invite you to study and then combine your lived experience with what you find in this fascinating data that we're being presented with as a tool for measuring the economic health. I mean, the degree of healthy communities. It looks at transportation. It looks at neighborhood. Neighborhood looks at the degree to which a person has, for example, access to enjoyment of a park. We know that in rural California, where you may have a massive public lands, but very little access to it, or you may be living in a city a half a mile from a park, but you're not safe, you don't feel safe going there because of homelessness. And again, that relates to housing. We know that there's an endemic housing crisis in most of California. So there's so much scale and relativity you can bring to this data. Clean environment looks at the degree to which there are, would you like to speak to this particular one, Katrina? With the clean environment piece?
Yeah, well, I mean, most of all, yeah, it's looking at some of the different conditions. What, the graph you're seeing, the graphic here is not only showing you the indicators, and we usually do this at other counties so they can know what is being measured. But because Sierra County only has a population of 3,040, you actually only have one census tract. So this is actually the data for the whole county as well. So Eliza's still going to show the live demonstration, but normally we go into different tracks and compare them. So overall as a county,
I'm not sure that I am going to give a live demonstration. I'm terribly cautious of not bogging you down in the detail.
Okay, good.
It might be better for us to focus on program goals.
Smart.
And then, have us listen and have a good old fashioned brainstorm rather than get bogged down into the details, especially bearing in mind there is one tract. And Katrina, we are going to be encouraging all our state local partners to give localized sort of training in the Healthy Places Index, and so there's more to follow on this. So I don't need to sort of bore you.
So what's great is BJ actually attended the Nevada County one where we ran through as well. So we have resources to guide through, but most of all, the thing I'm going to highlight about the environment is overall in the upstate region, we have really high scores with the environment, and the two places I'm tagging here for, and this will be synopsized in the next page where we sort of give the general trends, but both the drinking water contaminants.
I just wanted to say one thing.
Hold on one second, Katrina. Sorry, BJ would like to just pitch in for a moment.
It does not seem that the particulate matter that we've experienced in the last few summers during the fires has been considered in this these statistics right here.
So again,
no, that's great. Yeah, no, that's great. You bring that up.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say it's great you bring that up, BJ, because this is one of the things that Eliza had me through California Arts Council. We spoke with the people who created this, and I spoke at length about metrics for measuring. I mean, they do have a diesel particulate matter. They do have PM 2.5, but it doesn't really capture the impacts of smoke inundation. And they want to work with us in our rural communities to talk more about that. So it's great you flag that. It does capture the drinking water contaminants, which of course we know a leftover legacy of mining and other impacts, as well as ozone. We have some low scores in terms of ozone, those times that we stay indoors, even though it's invisible, and we know that there's this stuff that rots our lungs. So it does capture some of our environmental conditions, but the biggest one indeed, fire and smoke and the dangers of that is a very key thing we are highlighting to California Arts Council as well as the people who created the Healthy Places Index.
Absolutely. And so what we ask you to do is in your application, draw attention to these anomalies. If you want to challenge this data, because you know that we have much more up-to-date information than the 2020 census, or you're adding scale and relativity in the same way that Katrina has explained, we welcome that. I'm going to move on to the next slide now, Katrina. Anything you want to particularly highlight for Sierra County?
I have something I want to say.
Yes.
Transportation, Golden Race, senior citizen of Sierra County, has contract with Sierra County to run 2 vans. So we provide public transportation. And the Loyalton Senior Center has 2 vans over in Loyalton. So you can call and make appointments to be transported for medical appointments, shopping, or anything like that.
That sounds
So
like
I don't see that as a zero.
You see, on the other hand, that's also a wonderful challenge to you, Sandy, to consider whether if you were to work with an artist to create awareness for the transportation issue, but at the same time providing a solution, maybe that's a project. did you know you have access to transportation, right? So that's a wonderful resource that you just pointed out there.
Well,
And there.
everybody knows, about it, except you
Yeah.
guys.
All right,
and-
yeah, maybe it's
Taxis and Ubers and buses are important to help.
Yes.
I mean,
But
why is
Uber's
that?
too expensive.
We don't need those things. They
Yes.
cause pollution, they cause violence, they cause lots of
Yes,
things.
interesting.
So why is that such a big factor up here? We don't
Interesting.
have any public transportation. We have one public transportation.
Katrina, this is so interesting, isn't it? I think this is one of those things that would go into we have a living document called Reflections. And every time we participate in a listening session with a community and we get this kind of input, we record that and we share it back with the Healthy Places Index folks. And they are grateful and they are listening. So I love it. So in other words, don't create a project about transportation if you don't need it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Anything else, Katrina, from this slide?
Oh, I just heard a mention. I just wanted you to know a little bit on just percentiles. So, you know, when you see these numbers, it's basically comparing to other counties. There's two ways to look at it. You can look at Sierra County since it's one tract. It can compare to other tracts in California, or it can compare to other counties because you are the unique exception, along with, I think maybe there's a couple other counties that have that, but not in our region. You're the only one in the upstate region. So just know that it just means the 0.0 ranks. It's the lowest of the counties in California in terms of the metrics that they measure. And as same with these other numbers that are here, we already talked about ozone and drinking water contaminants. The last one I just want to highlight was about housing, because in so much of the upstate region, we've heard from so many people the difficulty of being able to stay and live or have the next generation stay and live there because of the cost to be there. So the low income homeowner, severe housing cost burden. It's basically looking at the cost of housing and how that's impacting. So that had quite a low score as well. So just basically when you look at these different, again, Eliza said this, but we can't say it enough. It's the local knowledge, it's the lived experience that we most want to hear about, but this can help guide you to look at some of those factors or back it up with some data.
Perfect.
And
You will-
could I just
Yeah,
address that?
please.
I'm an RN and I'm part of the EMS system here. The healthcare access on the western side is always teetering. I mean, we do have a clinic, but it's only open 4 days a week. And so that people are on call at night, you know, or otherwise 24/7. And so there isn't a lot of healthcare access because there's not enough even people in Downieville to answer a call. If there's an ambulance run, they have to call and call and call because there's just not enough people because they're either working or, you know, they need to, you know, someone.
So you've identified an issue there.
Mhm.
And
Well, I've
then-
been an RN here for 40-some years.
Well, you're
So-
an incredible resource. So what kind of project that involves an artist creating awareness for that might help? So every time I hear an issue, I think, okay, that could become a project. What would it look like if you attached an artist to that to create awareness? What would it look like? So here we are. This is when you go into the Healthy Places Index, and I'll provide the links for these to you. This is what it looks like, but with county lines. We thought you'd be interested to see just what it looks like, you know, where all the green and the blues are. So when we consider, one of the reasons that we're with you is we're considering what kind of grant program to actually create. What do we take into account? Do we take into account the density of very dark blue area tracts, those that fall beneath within the lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index? Do we take into account the county population, its geographic side, the degree to which its populations, tribal and ethnic populations are healthy and thriving or not? And of course, the overall proposal strength will be important. The likely longevity of a project and the degree to which it might become an amazing gold standard case study for other communities or yourselves. Could it be repeatable later? Think about these things looking ahead. the eyes of the nation are literally upon California at the moment. This is a pilot program. Never before has California Arts Council been in receipt of such a large single sum of money for a finite period of time that puts artists to work to tackle these critical issues that must carry meaning for you locally. If it's successful, we hope that the program will continue. And if it does continue, we want to be able to shine a light on some of the programs that you yourselves have created that other communities can learn from and adopt themselves. So think good case studies, because we'll be watching. We'll want to document them. And then the other thing that we're considering is, what size grants do you want us to offer? Would you prefer small grants of $5,000 because artists have jobs elsewhere and they don't want to be tied down to this for a length of time? We're finding that a lot. Or would you like really ambitious, large sums of money which involve multiple agencies and perhaps one or two artists working together or more across county lines into other regions? So those are the things that we're thinking about now. And if you have thoughts about them, we are all ears. If we were a larger group, I'd say, let's kind of break out into small groups, have conversations, and then come back with aha moments. But we are a small group. And so I welcome your thoughts. What are you seeing from all this data?
Well, for
Are
one
projects coming to mind?
I do want to stand up just because it's hard to sit that long. And I want everybody to know, I looked at the webcam in Sierra City for those who have to travel, and it's raining in Sierra City. So,
Not snowing, in other words.
right, so we're okay to get home.
Oh, good for you.
Yes.
Does anyone want to eat pizza, by the way? Because
There's still.
why don't we pass the box around?
This water, if somebody needs water,
Oh, that's great. I have some here.
and there's sodas.
We also have a sign-in sheet if you haven't gotten your name
Anyone
on
not
there.
signed in so that we can keep in touch? Brilliant.
Yeah, we have a few people.
And also we have a microphone that as soon as we turn it over, he can turn it on and then we can capture.
I
the
think we
audio.
are. We're telling it right now. We want to hear from you. What are you hearing? Any projects coming to mind that you want to sort of run by the group or each other or us?
I have a question.
Yes.
From the get-go,
Great.
working from the, being a musician and a writer, and also being in the office at the Mountain Messenger and seeing the press releases come in, and I'm just thinking, what does this look like? Can you give me an example? I mean, are you saying that, I get we're trying to bring in artists to join together to focus on the talking points, the goals that you mentioned. So I write music. So I write a bunch of ukulele songs and piano songs about stop buying bed and breakfasts so we can get real people who live here to be on our ambulance, right? I mean, I could write silly songs all day about, ride your mountain bikes and please don't throw out your trash on our scenic highway. I could write a ton of silly songs. I'm really trying to see like, what does this look like? Can you give examples in other counties of what are artists doing to bring awareness? And
I love that question.
Carl said, talk to them about getting a grant for you to finish writing your book. I just don't understand what.
I know, and it's inevitable that whenever there is, it's so challenging to come by funding as an artist, isn't it? And project funding for artists, and when it is there, it's scarce and it's highly competitive. And many times we don't have even the capacity to write that exhausting grant. So we want to make it as easy as possible for you to think about the kinds of grants. So who's heard of the WPA? So the Works Progress Administration, on the heels of the Great Depression, Roosevelt created basically an infrastructure, human infrastructure project that put millions of people to work across America. And it lasted all the way through to the middle of the Second World War. Underneath the umbrella of the WPA were 4 federal art programs in different disciplines of art. So during that time, some of the most amazing American art which is well known to this day. You know, some of the most incredible mural programs. If you're a literary artist, you may be aware of the amazing tour guides that were produced of, you know, there's an incredible WPA California in the 1930s, written by writers. Journalists became very, very involved as artists to document and tell stories about California. The idea being Roosevelt wanted to create a picture of America and to create a sense of America that was positive. And when I think about the WPA, it reminds me of this program. And we know that the WPA inspired this program. Next week, on the 17th, at 1 o'clock in the middle of the day, we have invited David Kippen, who is the former chair of literature at the National Endowment for the Arts and an all-round authority on the WPA, to come and give us an online conversation to talk about the kinds of projects, the kinds of enduring projects that have stayed with us from the WPA. That you should definitely listen to. If you're wondering, like, even if you would just, you know, register for it, even if you're driving, listen into it, treat it like turning on the radio and listen. It's going to be fabulous. If you can give time to it, we'll also be, you know, having breakout rooms where one breakout room will be attached to one program goal. Another breakout room will be attached to another program goal, and artists in all disciplines who are interested in one or other of those program goals can go and talk with other artists or agencies with missions aligning themselves to one of those program goals. So it'll be a fabulous learning opportunity. We find in different communities with different experiences, art can mean really different things. We found in Modoc, for example, up in the far northeast of California, they love the idea of murals because it's creating a sense of place, a sense of belonging, you know, in a county which has more cows than it does people. And so murals are the most accessible, visible form of creating that sense of place and belonging. In another area, it might mean something completely different, an area that, for example, is rich in literary artists. It might be about documenting story, working with local tribes whose stories are you know, are unheard. Or it could be film, again, telling the story or creating awareness around one or other of these issues that the community deems is important and critical. So I don't know if that helps.
So when you talk about, just for the example, you presented.
Speak
Joe
up, please,
with,
so we can hear you. Thank you.
when you encourage Betty Jo to partner with an artist to promote and address the issue of lack of available EMTs, ambulance, emergency workers here, partner with an artist, a film, is that, and I'm
A documentary.
a documentary.
Absolutely. Or a comedy piece. I mean, anything where the message is coming through and creating awareness for an issue or an issue and a solution is going to be effective, isn't it? Think of this as an awareness campaign. Monies are to be spent on creating awareness for these issues.
So in the census though, like for us, we're very seasonal,
Yes.
right? We have 5 months of business. As a business owner, you knock the cover off the ball for 5 months. And for the other 7 months, it's standard. But that doesn't really translate anywhere on the census. Can we still take on a project that kind of like tries to address that or promote, say, winter activities, even though it doesn't show up in the census, or is that a struggle?
I think that's really interesting. I think if I think about the Healthy Places Index, Katrina, can you remember what the economic outlook is in terms of community conditions in Sierra County? I don't have my laptop on me, but that's clearly connected to the economy, isn't it? That's an issue. I mean, it really is. It's an issue. Just the idea that 5 months out of the year you can depend upon a reliable sort of transactional, business window of opportunity. And for the rest of the time you can't, that's terrifying.
Well, I'm sure it's
I know
showing up
people-
in employment industry, elements, per capita income, there's all kinds of ways, but again, yeah, wonderful for you to highlight, what are some of those brainstorms of, ways to, help with the economic conditions.
I'm not sure if it's me that's making so much rustling.
It is.
And I'm trying to,
Yeah.
think whether it's more helpful or less helpful for me to wear it. What do you
I
think?
think it's more helpful, but it,
Should I sit very
no,
still?
you should, yeah, you should not mess with your hair, but also just tilt it up, maybe just slightly. Yeah.
It just keeps falling down.
DJ, is there a way that we can if we take that off and then we can pass around, because I'm afraid
Yeah.
we're gonna miss the audience speaking.
Well, let's just use the other one.
Yeah.
I think this one.
Yeah,
There we go.
can you come please and help us? We were having a hard time making that work too. Yeah.
So in the meantime, I'll just share some comments that we have on the Zoom.
Great.
So there was a question, do you have examples of types of project collaborations? And then we had a response from Katrina saying one idea that came up in Yuba County, upper watershed region, bringing lower watershed people up for an experience of their watershed, but higher up. So youth here for some upper watershed time, and then they do art projects, for example, tiles that go up in their community. So that's one example. And then Julie Starkey also shared with us one example that I know of from the past is a cultural collaboration between a choral group, Vox Musica, and the Nisenan tribe in Nevada City to write and perform a tribal song in a concert performance for the public. It was an opportunity to share the history of the tribe and the work to preserve their cultural history.
That was one of the most, it was one of the most exquisite things I have heard, was our own local Nisenan, which is your local Nisenan tribe, working with Vox Musica. Absolutely exquisite.
Other microphone, the wired. And you can, where's your little thing? We can turn it off.
Yeah.
So it'll stop. Mike, could you pull that out, the microphone there?
Here, actually, BJ, we'll use this one. This one is working.
Oh, never mind. We got this one.
Great.
Okay, so
All right.
now,
Great. I'm just undressing here while I just.
and I'm gonna hand this to you and, or I can, and I'll stand here and I can, or you can pass it to people. I don't know how you want to.
Great.
Riley?
Okay, super.
Shut it off.
Did everybody catch those examples that Gianna gave? Wonderful. And then another example is, we were talking about the 9, what's it?
The North Yuba Forest Partners, there's 9 agencies that are involved in fuels mitigation, which is why we had North Yuba River Day for the first time last year. And that was to raise awareness around an incredible opportunity here in Sierra County that's coming into being. And this is going to be 151,000 acres of fuel mitigation that they're going to do through the North Yuba Forest Partnership. And so it's just whether or not Katie O'Hara, the North Yuba River naturalist, and Vanessa Stevens from the San Francisco State Field Campus, we all have talked about raising community awareness around this project and what our future forests could look like.
That's it. And you know, that could be an agency maybe perhaps that applies and then hires artists. It could be multifaceted, it could be murals, it could be poetry, it could be a lot of things.
Exactly. So we're talking about documenting the work of, of 9 agencies working together. That's really unusual on a forest management project that's going to help mitigate, you know, the risk of catastrophic fire along the Yuba watershed. I mean, that's extraordinary. That's a perfect example that lends itself, you know, if you write a strong application and get an artist in any discipline to work among, you know, to be set free to document, but to be worked with those agencies, that's an amazing project. Over how long a period is that project?
I'm actually not that sure. Do you know? You don't know, because I know the county just signed off on it. I thought Corey is a planner in Sierra County. I thought she might know, but I could see this as being all-inclusive. We can do a mural about forests, you know, future forests, or we could do animal rescue. We can do a play. We could, you know, oh, there's a fire in Downieville. Imagine a melodrama. Anyway. I don't want to monopolize the microphone here. Is there someone?
I love
I'm
your
sorry,
thinking.
my problem is I can't walk. Yes.
I'll be mobile. How about I pass it around? Did anyone want to add to that?
We do have a comment here from Zoom.
Okay.
So we have Lindsay, she's the executive director of Music Sierra. Lindsay, I know you wanted to share an idea with us, so I'll just unmute you. And we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, yes, thank you. Hi, BJ. I can see you now. My husband's here right behind me. This is Owen. He is my operations director for Musica Sierra here. So he's fully intertwined with all of my programming and everything that we do. My first question, I guess, is can an entity like Musica Sierra apply for more than one project to be funded? Because we have a couple of parallel projects that have been happening for a couple of years now, and BJ's for sure in the know about it because she has supported them in the past and still does for the future. So can I apply for more than one project, or are you thinking maybe just one? Yeah, what are you thinking?
I think one, yes. So really choose and focus on it and think about, and again, with grant writing, what you're doing is it's the opposite of you have to sort of turn your thinking toward and be utterly single-minded in terms of the degree to which you question yourself at every turn of phrase. To what degree is my project attaching itself to the program goals of the California Creative Corps? And at first, it's psychologically jarring to do that, especially as artists, because we work so hard. We're so underfunded historically and currently at any given time. So I know that all Musica Sierra's projects are just fabulous, but you're going to need to think, you're going to need to, as an act of faith, if you want to apply for these funds, really align yourself to these program goals. I know you can do it, Lindsay, but be very strict with yourself.
And I will help anybody who's writing the grant. I've done it a lot. The Arts Council, we ourselves are not going to be applying for this funding, but we're here to help facilitate anybody who wants to put a project together. And I always like to think of grant writing as persuasive writing, where you're trying to, meet the goals and the guidelines that you're given, but you're trying to write it in an interesting way that persuades people that you've got a good idea.
That's absolutely brilliant. And that pretty much sums up what a county arts agency, what a state local partner, such as Sierra County Arts Council does. So Sierra County Arts Council will be working with us as the administering organization to make sure that you're given perhaps grant writing workshops and technical assistance to help with some of these questions. You can always come to us directly, but BJ is so experienced. She's amazing. I mean, just the words that she uses make me feel all sort of relaxed inside about grant writing. So she's going to be great.
BJ is so experienced that right before you talked about that, somebody was asking if there's any help with grant writing. So I hope you caught that Belle that was asking that question. So thank you, BJ.
Absolutely.
And then Lindsay still has another question, so she wasn't fully done. So I'll unmute her.
Hi, I'm unfortunately not Lindsay, but I'm her husband. We kind of speak as one voice. And the question that we had was, I know that the equity in the state and in the North State and spreading these funds probably equitably amongst the North State, but also in terms of the awarding of it and how many of these different elements of the grant we're hitting, from the demographics to the collaborations, etc. Is there a cap per county on a project limit itself? Say, for example, Music of Sierra wants to apply for a $1.5 million project that's going to have huge, long-lasting impacts. And say, for example, it hits all of these metric marks. Is there a cap in terms of pricing of these projects?
So obviously, the smaller the grant categories, the less competitive they will be, and the more of them there will be to offer. We were thinking about, do we just divide it up per county? It would be about 170,000 per county. But then we actually probably will apply those kinds of weightings that we talked about. You know, the degree to which health conditions, according to the Healthy Places Index, are showing that that particular county is really suffering versus really doing very well. And all the other factors. Probably the grant sizes that we offer won't be much larger than, a couple of 100,000, which is pretty sizable. We will hold back some discretionary funds, I should think, to apply to extenuating circumstances if there's a major fire between, suddenly, and a group of artists want to create an amazing project suddenly, then we could apply it to that. But also, if there's an amazing project that is multi-county, that we have something up our sleeves that we can provide extra funding for. So we probably won't be providing grants of $1 million, but we will get up there. We haven't quite decided yet. Grant guidelines come out and the application opens in the first week of February, we hope. And then the application period will run from the first week of February to close to the end of March. So we want to keep it open for a nice long period to give you the maximum amount of time to meet with Sierra County Arts Council to have grant writing 101 workshops and some guidance. BJ has can apply so much scale and relativity, and we all work together as executive directors. We call each other and have conversations, so we're very much on the same wavelength, and I completely trust BJ to give you the most fantastic consulting. She won't be actually writing your grants for you, but she'll be offering advice. Just protecting you, BJ.
So hopefully, just a quick question, does the artist for your proposed project or proposal need to also be within Sierra County? Is it a requirement, or is it just more favorable for your grant proposal if the artists themselves are within the county?
We have a dearth of artists.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm kind of saying this so that Katrina hears, because I think it needs to go into our reflections document. Sierra County, with its population of 3,000, there are not an enormous number of artists. Do we really want to restrict applications from Sierra County as do artists have to come from here, or can they come from any one of the other counties within the upstate region? For sure, I can tell you that they cannot come from other areas of California. They have to be in that yellow area, the upstate region. not from San Francisco. So we're going to want, you know, upstate to keep within upstate, if you like. But I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I'm going to make sure that we make that explicit within our grant guidelines, but I haven't quite got the answer yet, but it really helps. Thank you.
Yeah, and I like,
Definition.
Katrina, sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, sorry, I captured that. But the one thing, also just really keeping in mind, this is about also building those different resources within the different counties. So if an artist does come from out of the area, the ability for them to collaborate with, you know, again, to the intergenerational learning, or someone who's local and really bring those skills, it is really important to be able to be bringing, if it's a model that's worked, for instance, in another county and it's brought to Sierra, to really have the roots in place within the county for that to grow.
Yeah, that's where partnerships become quite useful. So in other words, the artist becomes like a residency. So you invite an artist in, and perhaps they're attached to a particular agency that can give that artist capacity and help create a vision based upon its existing mission that it is attached to one of the program goals. Does that make sense? I'm going to just pass this mic to you.
I just want to understand what your definition of an artist is, or do they have that publications or?
Creative. Well, as we know, there are, yes, there's a broad definition of artists out there. I mean, what are you thinking? Turn it back to you.
Are chefs artists?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because we have in Nevada County, we have this wonderful digital artist directory. And we also have an amazing culinary culture within our community as well. I haven't yet been able to persuade our other artists to accept in the culinary artists as in the artists, while they may have great respect for our culinary artists. So I'm not completely sure. It's a really good question. I'm not completely sure what kind of attack we would be under if we accepted in culinary artists, although we hugely respect culinary artists. Let me think on that one. I like the question. Thank you.
Is there a specific requirement for an artist to be identified, or is it just anyone that says they're an artist?
No, we will ask for, you know, hopefully the artist will have a website. They may or may not have gone to one of the best art schools, if there is. They may be a fabulous self-taught artist with incredible experience and some evidence that they have the capacity to create an awareness campaign around an issue critical to society. We need to be able to know that that artist can do this job. So yes, that will be important. Yeah.
So we do have a comment here on Zoom, whether we've talked with the Sierra Buttes Trail Fellowship, because they're really helping the community. And then she also replied to this question: is food could be a Swiss Italian heritage theme for the valley, or gold camp cooking. So, and then Katrina said, how about culinary artists bringing forth something from local tribes, local food sources, native plants, etc.
That's a good one. Love it.
Oh, also Julie Starkey also said something here, so I'll share with all of you too that are here. Is that from the California Arts Council Creative Corps frequently asked question page on their website? Applicant organizations may only submit one proposal and must indicate which service area they tend to support.
Yeah, brilliant. So kind of it's what we spoke to. Thank you so much, Julie. Yes, we've told you that we want you to respect the indigenous peoples, the first peoples of your counties, and we know that the culture of food sourcing and eating together, and that it's incredibly important. I'm wondering if it can be connected in some way with intergenerational learning as well. I feel like we need to create some sort of, in the same way that we've invited David Kippen next week to talk to us about WPA projects and then bring that up into current times. It might be quite helpful to have Sally, our tribal spokesperson for the Nissan, who is also your tribal spokesperson, come and talk to us about exactly that. I think it's a really interesting subject. So, yeah. There was the question, I didn't want to, the question about the something trails. What was that?
Yeah, whether we've talked with the Sierra Buttes Trail Fellowship, because they're really helping the community.
The stewardship was informed of all of this.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
And that their focus is on building trails in Sierra County. And they're big mountain bike mavens. And I just had one comment, and that was just that I think we need to be really considering the impact, whatever project that we decide we might like to try and support would have on our community. And for example, something to do with the forest and fires and all of that is of course of extreme importance in this age. And not only that, it affects counties and people outside of our county, because all that water down in the valley comes from us. Our water flows to the valley and gives everybody life and sustenance. So looking at these kind of issues that are broader, even though it's focused on Sierra County, I think would really be a very strong application.
And I love how big you were thinking in terms of, you know, bringing in the aims of a very small community, and so for example, your mural project could actually be part of the other bigger thing with the 9, you know what I mean? So think really strategically.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, like the mural could have all the 9 Yuba Forest partners could be part of that project. They
Right.
would also help fund it.
Yeah, and then is there another element of documenting that project through film, following those agencies through their work through the year, whatever it is. And just remember, it's all about paying the artist. Make sure that you have an artist who is there with you. Yeah, any other questions from the Zoom?
Yeah. So still from Lindsay and her husband, how are audience engagements measured and weighed with the grant awarding? Is the target audience the locals themselves, the county at large, the North State, the state, nation, world?
I would say think big and think local as well. Like, first of all, whatever project you're doing must have local meaning or regional meaning. If you're attaching it to a local or regional program goal, you know, you've identified projects, so you need to win hearts and minds locally. But then also, I love the way you're thinking. Can you see your project becoming a gold standard project that can be adopted elsewhere? The likelihood of it becoming a gold standard or a brilliant case study, it probably has a greater chance of success if your community absolutely loves it and is completely behind it, right? Wouldn't you say so? So you want to make sure that it's really embedded.
This is a stretch. But on the other end of the spectrum, I can see it's applicable. So I don't know, I'm just gonna throw this out there. I'm wondering if this is an opportunity that would help Carl at the paper digitize our paper from 1853. Our paper honors writers that are contributing stories from the early days of Sierra County. We honor poets. We give a lot of press releases for musicians. The obituaries that we write for people that from these lands and their contributions and those contributions of previous generations. I'm very, I'm kind of disheartened that we have such enthusiasts on the social media pages, for example, the Historical Society, there is someone who's putting a lot of energy and time finding the old history of the gold miners. And they're going, the gold rush stories, and they're going to incredible lengths to find these stories, and they are not anywhere. They're hard to find. It's a stretch, but is there a way that there is some way we could, civil engagement, it talks about social justice from the last.
What's the art element in that?
Well,
So could web design be considered an artistic?
Right.
That's what you have to almost do, right? So-
Digitizing, I mean, that's basically, putting things in a machine.
okay, but here's, if this whole place burns down because of a forest fire, we're concerned about the land, the history of the land, the original people, how, the ties for the east to the west.
Element to it.
So that's what I'm saying. It's a stretch. Can we
have to, that's where you have to kind of.
is it unheard of?
I'm not quite sure that I understand what the what is.
Digitizing is where you take old
Scan.
newspapers and you
And
scan.
what is it you want to digitize? Sorry.
Our history.
Art history.
Our history.
Okay, your history.
So we, historians, people that want to know about Sierra County.
So again, ask yourself, which of these program goals could we attach that to? Do you digitize all the stories of fire you've ever covered? Is
Well,
it-
I would pursue a grant for the digitization of the entire Mountain Messenger from the beginning of time. It's a massive project that's gonna need a manpower and financial backing, but it's absolutely needed for the morale, for the social and historical documentation, the accessibility for anybody who's interested in where they live. We're just unfortunately one of those counties that we don't have our history at the fingertips.
I guess the way I look at it, it's a possibility, but what we need to do is work back into it and say, what is the creativity process that you can attach to it? And who is the artist or artists that you can hire to?
So it's web designers, like she said, or is that a?
So again, I ask you. Thank you so much. So again, I love the idea. I think the project itself is just the most incredible project. Whether it's this grant that funds it or another grant, it's obviously well deserving. But again, you're going to need within your application to attach your project to one or other of these program goals. So again, you don't need to answer it now, but be thinking that for yourself. Because that probably will be one of the questions in the application. Which program goal or goals are you attaching your project to? Does that make sense?
But does a web designer fit into an artist?
We're actually considering,
If it doesn't, we have to stop right there,
NFTs, use NFTs, that's a better way to go. Just use NFTs.
So we do have a comment here pertaining to that. There's something available through FEMA now regarding preserving or protecting historical resources following disasters. And then this is from Julie from California Arts Council. So that was her comment. And she said, sorry, I don't have more info about it at this moment, but might be something for you guys to look it up.
Julie, let's be in touch because I'd love to pass that back because the Mountain Messenger is the most amazing, much loved community resource. And it's one thing, insisting upon us, aligning potential projects, challenging ourselves with the alignment of potential projects to program goals. But wouldn't it be fun if I could go back and talk to you and give you a link to that grant opportunity? I love it. So what time are we at the moment?
7.
We've been going for a long time. This is great.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions before you've been so good. I have a suggestion, and this is not related to Sierra County at all. And this would be, if you do go to Butte County, I put onto the National Register of Historic Places 2 locations. One of them was Mountain House, which was a stage stop. And the other one was the Feather Falls School. Both of those properties are in Butte County. Both of them were destroyed in the Bear Fire. Therefore, all of the history, all of that historic community is gone. And so when you do go to the Butte people, let them know, because this would be ideal for them, because they lost everything. They lost their entire community just due to this one fire. And one of the resources that,
Which fire was this?
this was the Bear Fire.
The Bear Fire.
And so one of them was a historic school. It was Feather Falls School, and it got destroyed by the Bear Fire. And one of the things that they were trying to do is to build a community. They were also associated with, and I'm losing, I think it was a tribe, and their wigwam. There was, I think it might have been their wigwam was destroyed as well. So they're eagerly trying to find funding to actually create a historical society in Feather Falls to actually rebuild or build something, because they lost everything. So including their wigwam that was historic to them and a place of worship. So
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. It's so great that we're recording it. So let's make an aim, Katrina, to make sure we talk with Ray, who is Executive Director of the Butte County Arts Council, and make sure that he's aware of that. We had a wonderful listening tour in Chico. We had folks come down from Paradise who are artists who are trying to rebuild, like lead the campaign of awareness that will create a new paradise. We experienced the same thing when we passed through Greenville in Plumas County. Is it Plumas or Lassen? Plumas, yes. And right in the middle of what is otherwise a decimated city, we found the most extraordinary group of artists who had set up, basically they're kind of camping in the middle, and they've brought in trailers and they're creating beautiful gardens and revisioning what they think their town will look like a few years from now. I mean, what incredible resilience. But I love, because this is on record, it'll allow me to sort of, rewind the tape, so to speak, get the information that you shared with me. Plus, if you've all given us your email addresses, right. Yes? Yes.
So when we reach out to you, you reach back out to us, and by then you'll have found the perfect link for me.
Eliza, can you tell me the name? Can you tell me the name of the person who brought that up so that I just can write it with a note?
My name is Corey Jimenez. I'm an architectural historian and was the one who actually wrote the National Register nominations for Mountain House and Feather Falls School. But I think this program would be ideal for the Feather Falls community, because they lost not only their school, it used to be a logging community, and all of that is gone. It was gone before I was listing the school onto the National Register. And then they were actually trying to get the historic community, Feather Falls, as a point of historical interest, and they reached out to me to kind of put together some type of, consider it a site. So the school district in Butte County actually still owned the land that the school was on, and now that the school is gone, the Butte, I think it was the Feather Falls Historical Society, was looking to actually get the land to rebuild a museum or a community center, just so that, because they didn't have anything. It's literally all gone.
Gosh.
It's hard to imagine. I would not want this in Sierra County at all.
No.
Well, and I just wanted to have you reiterate about that listening program about the WPA. We tried to co-host and somehow Facebook was not allowing us to
It won't
co-host.
allow us to go.
And, but I did post it, just a regular post on the Sierra County Arts Council Facebook page, if you're looking to get to that.
So again, can you just remind us, which day of the week is it next week? It's the
Tuesday
17th.
on the 17th.
Tuesday is that, so it's Tuesday, the 17th at 1 o'clock. So in the middle of the day, 1 o'clock. It's David Kippen, who is one of the foremost authorities on the projects that came from that through art. He's the former National Endowment Chair for Literature, but it won't just be literature exclusive. There'll be many different kinds of artists on board and talking. So I think it'll be a further inspiration for you. So next Tuesday, the 17th at 1 o'clock, and it's on Facebook. I'm just gonna quickly put. It's very temperamental today, isn't it? Okay, I'm gonna find the page that it'll come up in a moment. I'm trying to find the page with the there we go. The website and the email address for us. Yay, there you go. Can you see? So Upstate Creative Core, you can take pictures of the screen if you like. upstatecreativecore.org, and then we have a Facebook page specific to this grant opportunity, Upstate California Creative Core. We've also created a Facebook group which will launch, which you can join, and then you can share ideas about projects. We created a Facebook group as well as a page so that it was more accessible for you to share ideas. So you could get onto that group and you could say, hey, are there any other artists out there who are thinking of doing this, that, or the other, and have brainstorms? And you can ask that question, like throw out challenges to us and things like that.
So one thing I just kind of have a love for is the pictographs that we have in Sierra County. And I think, they're just fading away. Forest Service has done some stuff. You can hardly see them on the rocks anymore. And a lot of the Native American stuff was destroyed in the fire out on 89. When was that big one? They had a couple archaeology sites out there that were destroyed. But somebody would like to do the pictographs, or they would be wonderful.
I'll just comment just as an architectural historian. With the pictographs, you got to be careful because it's sensitive information. So if anything, I would say like some type of documentation similar to what the WPA, they did documentation of buildings. We could have something similar to like a documentation of picture glass. Holly Lake over in the Buttes area has a huge archaeological site. And if there's a way that there could be a documentation of those, that would be ideal, not disclosing the actual site location. I know a few locations, so, but I'm not a Native American, nor do I know a lot of the history of the better suited for an archaeologist or an archaeologist. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing that up as well. All these things, we think that we don't have the answers yet, and yet you do within your community. I mean, you are the resources that are going to be leaning upon each other. We're going to have many conversations between now and the end of March when the deadline for this application comes, and you're going to be forming partnerships and coalitions and brainstorming and challenging each other, and you'll be meeting up with us online. There will be more technical assistance and grant writing resources for you. So California Arts Council wants every county to have at least one project. So Sierra County is going to come out with something, and it's just up to you to think, okay, what's it going to be? What can we all get behind? Thank you so much for attending. I want to know who the folks at the back of the room are. Are they just family members waiting? Do they